Hello, everyone. Welcome to the New World September update, which also happens to be the one-year birthday for Aeternum. Ta-da! Cake. It's been a really long road this year. It feels like a lot longer than that to a lot of us. It's been exciting. We've had some hurdles, but overall, it's been great. And I just want to take a moment to thank the players for helping us get here. Working together as partners, it's been an excellent experience, and the team and game have gotten better for it. So thank you.
Yeah, we have a little bit of a different kind of MMO, and it's really important for us to live off of player feedback. So those of you who have stuck with us and supported us, tremendous thanks there. Also the people who gave us criticisms. All of that makes us better. If you haven't been playing for a while, I encourage you to check out the game now and see all the changes that we made in the last year. We're going to have a summary of them here, but you'll also find the game's just very different.
Next ones we want to just give a quick shout out to is the team. The dedication and effort put into making the game better. It's just been awe-inspiring and amazing, and I just want to say a big thank you to everybody involved in that on the dev team. It's been great.
And for the team at Greater Amazon, we owe them a ton. Christoph Hartman, who runs Amazon Games, Jeff Blackburn with GME. Amazon's been incredibly supportive of trying to do this the right way, do the right thing, support the customers, support the players. They've given us time and the ability to hone the game with your feedback, and that's a great environment to make a good game.
And the dev team's not just everyone who works for Amazon. We have a bunch of co-dev partners that I'd like to just call out. Ridiculous Games, Blind Squirrel, ManaWorks, Lost Boys, Robotic Arms, Secret Society Games, Climax, Certain Affinity, Virtuos, Layer. So many different groups are involved, and they've helped us get to where we are. That's one of the reasons you're seeing so much content come out through the team.
Also, I hope that when people hear the team here, they understand that that's much more than just the dev team. There's a publishing group that helps us out constantly, marketing, community, customer service, QA, things like IT that we need to be able to run the machines. There's a huge support group that helps the team be the best team it can be to deliver you features.
So thanks to everybody. It's really exciting being here at the 1 year mark. Today's show is going to be a little different. We're not going to have one host the whole way. There's going to be a lot of deep dives on different parts of the game, but we're going to start with our 1 year takeaways. So with that, let's get the show going. All right, we're ready to talk about some takeaways from year one. Joined by a few people today. We have Dave Verfaillie, who's the creative director. Drew Higbee, our senior product manager. And Katie Kaczynski, our live lead senior producer. So, when thinking about how we talked about, takeaways from the first year, there's something we do at work called stop, start, continue, and it's things we want to stop doing, things we want to start doing, and things we want to keep doing. I thought it'd be fun to talk about it in that sense. So what's going to happen is I kind of wrote down the things, and we're just going to throw them out on the table and talk about them. Of course, because we're game developers, we want to start with things we want to stop doing. So first thing we want to stop doing is taking 2 steps forward and 1 step backward. And what I mean by that is our team just busts our butts to get these releases out and make them really big and everything players want. And then we make a mistake that kind of takes away all of the goodness that we've added. So going forward, we're going to probably do a little less, but try to do it at a much higher quality and make sure our releases are even better. And part of that starts with the PTR, getting things out there earlier, and again, listening to the feedback and making sure that we're making the release as good as possible.
I think that we've already started the stop of that, right? So in the beginning of the year and late 2021, we were releasing content every month. And it was very obvious to players and ourselves that it just wasn't up to the quality bar. And so in the beginning of this year, we started adjusting to every other month and then just fixing bugs in the middle. And that was a recipe for success, but we still weren't quite hitting the bar that we wanted to hit. And I know that players expect from us. So we've continued to kind of elongate that time between content releases, which is, a positive and a negative, because we want to keep giving them content as quick as possible. But at the same time, we really need it to be hitting a very high quality bar. So we're definitely stopping and continuing to start.
Yeah, it's kind of a both.
It's all of it. Yeah, exactly.
Next one is stop the grind. So, New World it's changed a lot, right? We were a very different game 2.5, 3 years ago than we are now. And we've heard the feedback, and it's really important that we respond in a good way. And I think we've had some efforts toward that. Wouldn't you say, Dave?
Yeah, I think it's grind and also the friction of playing a little bit. In terms of the grind, like you remember how long it used to take to get to level 60 when the game started? Now with the RSC and some of the speed ups we've done, it's a much quicker progress. And what I like about it is it matches the content, right? Like, so as you quest, you naturally level up now and you go to the places you're at the right level. You don't have to do extra activities. So I think that's awesome.
Yeah, we're leaning into the storytelling and the setting clearer goals for players. We're still going to have a lot of that sandbox support, like open feeling gameplay, but we're also going to make sure we complement it with more directed gameplay.
Yeah. And in terms of the friction, like huge improvements there, right? Like off the top of my head, my biggest one is global storage, right? Like now I can access my stuff from any town from one storage center. So it's huge.
I don't know. I'm playing in the PTR right now, and when I craft 40 of any item, it's a lot better than it was just a few weeks ago. I can't wait to get that out for everybody.
Absolutely true. And I mean, not the least of which, fast travel, linked storage chests, as Dave mentioned, just a lot of reduced friction in the game.
Let's
Expedition
not,
orbs being removed.
Let's not forget
Huge
that
friction
one.
reduction for players hopping in. Group Finder being able to hop into groups together easier. Lots of improvements there.
Oh, my favorite, inventory while running.
Oh my
Come
gosh,
on.
yes.
True.
So
Yes.
awesome.
That one's kind of fun because I think we mentioned this before in a different video, but if you look back at our roadmap and our plans, inventory while running was not actually supposed to come out as soon as it did, but we heard players in that one, and we realized that that was an area of opportunity that we could pull in that work and try to get that done sooner. And it was a huge impact on people. So that was awesome, and we want more of that. We want to be able to do more of that.
I mean, all of that, that basically everything we did in our reduced friction initiative was from the players. Like this was all stuff we had on lists and we wanted to get to, but it came through really clearly that you wanted us to get to this now, so we did.
Yeah.
Another stop is being behind the queue issue, and I don't, no pun intended there, but we haven't reacted fast enough or anticipated properly when large groups were coming in, and it's created some queue issues, and it's something that going forward we're gonna do our best to improve at that.
Yeah, we have some plans that are currently, design is done, but we're currently looking at implementation that's going to help folks move to their desired world really quickly. And that's what we need to do to get rid of the queues. Anybody who was here in the first weeks of September knows that we had some queues from returning players and some new players, and the response that we had to that versus the response we had at launch queues is night and day. Right? So within a day and a half, queues on most worlds had gone down, and it's kind of an elegant locking and unlocking solution along with opening worlds as worlds become full so that we can make sure that there's an even distribution versus just being like, here's 100 worlds, have at it. And then after player lands on a world when they first start, then they can transfer somewhere else if they feel like they want to. But this is how we're addressing the queue situation, because we definitely do not want another launch situation.
But we're okay with queues, a little bit of queue time also, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, we just don't want it to be an hour.
Yeah,
I mean, personally, I don't want it to be 30 minutes. I would like to make it as low as possible, but I and other players, we associate queues with this world as poppin', right? It just can't be a long time in the queue because I want to actually play.
Yeah, I think 5-10 minutes is understandable at some points, not every time you log on, but sometimes. And I just want to say, like we're not home yet. We know that. Like we know some people are still experiencing problems. We're working on it. We're looking at ways to get you to transfer players easier to other servers. So if that is a problem for you, it happens. And we understand that this is really important to the long-term success for New World.
Yeah.
Agreed.
Let's talk about some things we want to keep doing. So these are the continue stuff. One of the one at the top of the list is this. And what I mean by this is communicating directly with the players. Not only through the dev video, but the forums, we're on Reddit, all the stuff we talk about all the time, the in-game feedback mechanism. We're gonna keep doing this. We think it's been working really well for us. We hope you feel the same way. So that's one I don't think we have a lot of discussion around. It's pretty straightforward. Another one is we want to keep investing in performance. We want the game to run as good as possible on as many machines as possible.
Yep. No, and I think performance is multi-factor, right? Like we want to deal with client performance so that it runs well. We want to deal with network performance so that you can see all the people. I know we've had some issues where like you might lose VFX or things like that. These are all high on our list. We recently put back the instancing wars. That's an attempt to make hubs more stable. So this is something we're tackling on multiple fronts. It's one we're not done with also. Like you said, this is a continue for sure, but it's high on our list. And I think, you got to be able to play the game at performance to really enjoy it. So,
we want to keep doing events. The summer event was, I had a blast playing it. I think like the players seem to like it. The winter event, the Winter Convergence Festival we did last year, even Turkulon was pretty fun.
Oh,
Turkey Terror.
giant turkeys. Come
Turkey
on,
Terror,
man.
sorry.
Not the love.
But I think it's something we want to, keep doing and,
Yeah.
and lean into a little more.
What
Absolutely.
do those giant turkey legs sell for on the market these days, Drew? They're
Pretty
expensive.
good amount.
Yeah.
So.
That's pretty, because they're delicious. Yeah, we definitely want to keep digging into that. I know that, personally, and after reading forums and Reddit, like the Summer Medley Fair did excellent. It's probably one of our best performing events. And that says something because it was an event that brought people together. It got them to be in an excited way introduced to this new gameplay, which was instruments. So that was really cool. I know that quite a few of my friends who had lapsed, honestly, came back for musical instruments, and they're like, hey, you want to jam out for like real quick? And I do want to jam out real quick. Let's do this. It's awesome. And so we're going to lean into those events that are just exciting and fun.
It was so funny. I was playing the other night, and we're doing the chest run in Merkgard, and we're on the last big portal. And some dude's up there playing music, and people are like, why is he doing that? And I'm like, who cares? It's hilarious.
What was the buff, though?
Which
buff
territory
was it?
standing or something.
Territory standing.
I know, we're in Shattered Mountain. You don't get any territory standing, but who cares? It was still fun.
It is fun. I like it a lot, and I honestly will. Before we do like an elite chest run, somebody will start playing music, and if they have a buff that's like interesting, like either gathering luck or even like decidedly dexterous, I think those ones are kind of fun to pick up right before you do those runs.
Oh yeah, I always start up a session right before we go into mines for the increased yield.
Yes.
Yes.
Yep. Exactly.
I think for me, the rewards this time for the medley affair were awesome, right? And I think that's a big improvement. Like the patterns were really awesome. That fishing pole, although we know there's a bug with it, we're on it. That is an amazing fishing pole. So I think just the rewards really gave me another reason to participate.
My whole backyard is lights from I had all these extra tokens.
It's hilarious.
What else do we want to keep doing? We want to keep getting better at storytelling and varying our content more.
Yeah. I think the revamped starting experience, what people are playing right now in the PTR is really a big personification of this, right? Like we want the story to push people through the zones. We want the story to, tell meaningful stories. We're doing more in terms of introducing people like the Grace O'Malley character. You're getting to see her more often, so you build that relationship with her. The types of questing experience we're doing. Are you laughing at me because I'm wearing a hat?
Because you're so
I don't know how bad. I just want to snap that. I don't know. I got to get mine off too.
There's platforming, where you jump from hat to hat now. But all these different types of experiences, I think, just really help the starting experience and questing.
Absolutely.
I also
Absolutely.
like the historical figures that are sprinkled in, and that kind of gives me that connection to what's going on and what it could be.
Absolutely. I think Brimstone Sands is a huge, huge amount of lore that goes into that, and very interested in the history that we're building there.
For sure. One of the main pieces of feedback that we got previously was people didn't really connect to the story. Like it was there, but unless you were truly seeking it out, you really didn't find it. Like it wasn't a part of your journey. They just joined and did what they wanted. And so with the revamped starting experience to start it off, and then into Brimstone, that entire progression, you are hearing her talk in your head, which just brings it home. This is Isabella talking to you. So that is so cool. And it definitely brings the lore and the storytelling direct to the player this time.
Yeah, and there's a few cinematics that were held back that we can't wait to share with people as well. I think that's going to help drive that story further home. So,
Secrets
yeah.
and surprises.
What else do we want to keep doing? More on-demand group content for PvE and PvP. So what I think about this one, it's the expeditions, OPR. Those things are just so fun, and they seem to be resonating with players. So we want to keep doing those type of activities and maybe invent some new ones.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the other thing that we have added in the last year is we have the 3v3 arenas. We're still looking at a lot of improvements and changes coming to those over the next few months. So definitely want to continue to build on the different modes that we've introduced. To that end, Group Finder and removing expedition keys, huge boost. We actually have twice as many expeditions being run every day than we used to have just a few weeks ago before these two changes. We're very excited about. That means so many more players are getting into expeditions so much easier and getting all that loot and getting all that content fed to them easier. Awesome.
And the solo option, right? Because so that was not something that we launched with, was a solo option for people that wanted to just play the main story quest line without having to group up, and they just want to do their own thing. And that's now an option. So you have an opportunity to do a solo experience instead of having to group up. I still suggest grouping up. You can use Group Finder. There's no orbs. Come on, get into the expedition.
And a big one, you mentioned arenas. Like, we're now going to be introducing separate queues for solo people and groups in arenas. So I think that's going to, one, help the balance, and two, just give another option to solo players.
I also think like Group Finder, we have some kinks to work out there, and over the next few months, I think we're going to make it more accessible and easier for players to get in and find it. And it's something we're going to continue to work on and improve.
Yeah, I think the PvP experience for lower level players being able to jump into arenas, as we see more players returning and more players starting up in New World, we're seeing those start to really pop off. This last week, we had massive amounts of players participating in level 30 arenas.
Yeah.
So definitely suggest jumping into the queue while you're leveling just to see.
We want to keep adding horizontal gameplay. You might notice that, you know, we were asked a lot, are you going to raise the level cap for Brimstone? And we just didn't think it was time to yet. We think as we get more content and more things for players to do, we feel like there's enough there, but we did want to grow sideways a little bit. You know, so our first foray into this is the Heartgem.
Yeah.
I don't know if you want to.
No, Heartgems are a great example, right? One, I think we wanted another active ability, right? So I think it helps the sort of combat experience. And two, it gives you another way to sort of itemize your character. And a lot of these, you know, we really designed them as sort of utility abilities, right? Like, so they complement builds. And since they're separate from weapons, it's sort of like almost a third little weapon choice, right? To sort of create a holistic build. So we have that. We have obviously the rune glasses coming out also. And also, like, I mean, perks and the sort of itemization around gearing is really our key horizontal gameplay also, right? And I think that's something we recently did, the perk revamp, that I know Drew was super excited about.
Yeah, absolutely. I think in July release, we did the big revamp of almost all the perks in the game. I think out of all of them, we only left maybe 10% untouched. Everything else has changed. That was a huge effort by the team to go through, and we've seen very positive reception, you know, millions of items being crafted, people chasing those best in slot pieces. It's pretty exciting to see that gameplay evolve too.
Yeah.
The next one is near and dear to my heart. We call it Keep the Chill. We want New World to continue to be a place you can get lost in. Chop down trees, harvest, fish, play music instruments. Just, it doesn't always have to be a stressful go kill, go run a dungeon, go do a run. Like those are fantastic and really fun. But sometimes it's also fun to just kind of chill through the game, relax, to harvest stuff, do things like craft and other activities that aren't quite as stressful. So it's something that I think makes New World feel a little different than other games, and something we're going to keep leaning into.
New World can either be a job or a vacation. The opportunity and option is yours.
Yeah, there's nothing like just running around harvesting and coming upon a new vista maybe you haven't seen before, and a different time of day when you get there, and an entirely different look down on a valley.
Yeah,
It's just great.
At dusk, grab that fishing pole, go to some water, watch a sunset.
It is cool. We want to keep pushing our combat forward. We think our combat is one of the big differentiators in the game, and it's something we are going to continue pushing and try to improve and make better.
Yeah, I mean, we just talked about the Heartgems. That's our most recent addition. We got a new weapon coming that's going to completely shake up the meta, the big Greatsword. So it's something we're going to keep investing in. The performance of it is another area that we're constantly looking at, how to optimize, make it smoother, especially in large-scale combat. So big effort.
And I think we're gonna, I don't have a time frame or anything, but we're gonna continue to add more weapons into the mix over time for sure. I think it's interesting how it mixes up gameplay.
Let us know what you want next, community.
Yes.
They've let us know.
And what is it?
Daggers.
Hackers. Absolutely.
We'll see. We'll see.
TBD. There's other
I
weapons
thought it
in
was
the mix
blowgun.
too. A blow dart gun?
We want to continue making the rewards better and improving the rewards and delivering great rewards. I think that, what drives you to do anything, it's the rewards. So
Yeah, absolutely. We talked about a bunch of adjustments on the perks, making it feel more rewarding when you're crafting just because there's more of the perks are viable. There's more builds to play with there. We also went back and did a pass and looked through all of the elite zones in the world and a lot of the just different POIs and up the level of some of those monsters. So that way there's new items available from those. I know I've spent many hours farming rings myself out in the open world. So we really looked at the rewards across the different aspect of where players play and where they spend their time, and I've tried to increase those. I think it's also really apparent in Brimstone Sands and a lot of the different POIs and zones there and rewards that you're getting from quests.
And the starting experience, right? Like we handcrafted rewards for every quest from 1 through 25.
Yep.
And a lot of them are really juiced, right? Like they give you power over your level, which is really great feeling. And since you level pretty quick now, it doesn't sort of, break the balance too much. So it's fun to sort of give them juiced rewards.
break the balance, which leads to our last continue, which is we want to keep things balanced. It's important, and we hear the feedback, and the meta, is this or the meta is that. I think, what is it today? I read last night it was the bow and the musket, which I don't agree with.
Bow PR.
Yeah, bow maybe, but musket is, I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, it's difficult, especially a game with such wide variety of gameplay, right? Like we've got obviously PvE solo, we've got group PvE, we've got solo, we've got the arenas, we've got wars, we've got OPR. So across this wide spectrum, it's really hard to balance things. I think, we're continuously looking for outliners, but sometimes if a weapon is really good in one part of gameplay, that is sometimes okay with us that it doesn't shine in every other, right? Like I know the musket is the example Scott and I have talked about, right? Like in PvE, the musket is not, I think it's not high tier, let's be fair. But it can be really, really good in OPR. And, in war, they have, specific musket ranges for the siege weaponry and things like that. So there's purposes.
But the musket, to me, is an example of where a weapon can be considered OP, when quite often a player who's way better than others. And
Is that why you don't like it?
yes, no, I'm very
I don't think I've
embarrassed.
ever seen Scott use a musket.
Actually, you'll see
You
one
can't
today.
aim.
I can aim, I just can't hit anything. But when I play myself play and then I watch Shroud play, I want to kick something because he headshots every single thing, every shot, and by human, like in OPR and stuff. And whereas for me,
You can't even hit an AI.
I can hit it. I can hit our game team members, but some players crush me. Anyway, let's move on. I think the first one is we're going to start leaning more into solo.
Yeah.
But by the way, that doesn't mean we're going to ignore PvP or PvE or anything else. Or group play. We're going to lean into solo as one thing we're just going to put more effort toward.
Yeah, I think especially at endgame, there's not a lot of solo activities that you can do right now. And I think that's something we're starting to take a look at. And I think you're going to start to see glimpses of it in Brimstone already. There might be opportunities for more solo chests as you get into the PTR and explore there. And I think, finding ways to, create meaningful progression in gameplay for endgame players as solo is something we're going to start thinking more about.
But I think the experiment, fight during the end of the Brimstone story, after I played it a few times, I'm like, I think we probably should try to find more ways to do things like this in the game. It feels really good.
Yeah, it's the Apophis fight. That solo instance is really fun, and it's like playing a boss in an expedition, except you get to do it all by yourself. It's got the same phases.
I didn't want to blow the story for people, but
it's not what I just said.
it's not Apophis. It's some other person.
They're going to see it.
Yeah. We now feel like we've done a pretty good job at group content, and now we want to start working towards super hard endgame raid content. And it was really important that we made a few good expeditions before we start, crawl before you walk before you run, that kind of thing. It was really important that we felt like we were succeeding at making expeditions before we start looking at raids. And I think we have some evidence now that we're doing a pretty good job at expeditions, and we can start moving down toward that.
Yeah, absolutely. I think there's a lot of compelling content to be made for 10, 20 group of players to see. You may have seen a glimpse of something that's in the future in store for you, and we are looking to add a lot more content like that in the future.
Yeah, for me, I think it's going to be hella fun when it's done. But the other thing is, like, right now, a lot of the gearing in game is so oriented towards PvP, right? Like best in slot is defined by resilient and all the PvP perks, right? And what we want to do is create some PvE content that is as hard and challenging as war, so that you really have to optimize your gear for the PvE experience. And I think when we release this feature, that is a goal, right? Like to make sure that it really drives the end game progression.
I hope whenever we release that feature, you have some method that helps you manage those gear changes that we're talking about. Because I think that would be important.
Yes, one of the big things that we're looking to do is aim for easier ways to swap in between different gear sets. Obviously, those of you who do high-level mutations, you're probably rocking different gear sets for different mutations to reduce the damage that you're taking from the monsters in those. Inventory management starts to become a lot when you are carrying all these different sets, and we're looking to add a feature that will help out with that significantly.
As a crafter, I would like that also, right? Like I don't have to swap into
Certainly
stone
true.
cutting, refining, all that.
But just full transparency, those aren't like in the near-term roadmap. These are things we're working toward.
That's why we're not calling them out by any kind of name.
Yeah. Speaking of things we're working toward, on
Yeah.
our last start,
Things that are in the design phase.
yes, things that are really early, like concepting.
Yeah.
But we do get some feedback that players would like more ways to move quickly through the world.
Yeah.
More fast
And
travel points?
more.
I don't think they want
you know-
fast travel.
You know, shrines are great, but as our world is growing, and I mean, people have seen Brimstone Sands, it's massive, and the world is going to continue to grow. We are designing mounts.
Again, no timeline on these. Very far into the future,
Yeah.
but it is something we are beginning to actively work on. Part of that is because we know as the world gets, like right now, the world is really big. I think if it gets any bigger, it's going to require it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It's super important. So you can kind of think about timelines along those lines.
But don't think about timelines,
Yeah.
like at all.
Yeah.
Don't think about that. Just know that we heard you. We know that this is important, and we are working on it, but it is very, very close to just the inception point.
Yeah.
So.
Well, in an effort to not let this thing go on all day, I think we're gonna call this one done. But before we leave, big shout out to Aeternum. Happy birthday! Happy birthday, team!
Happy birthday.
All right, welcome back, everybody. Hi, I'm Mike, and joining me are Rob, Rosie, and Phil again, and we're going to talk about the revamped starting experience. I'm really excited about this. Major changes and overhauls took place, and a lot of it had to do with the story that we wanted to tell. And I wanted to start from kind of the beginning, which is appropriate on some of the new mechanics and storytelling methods that made it into the current world state for the player. So Rob, why don't we start from the crash?
Sure. You know, so we absolutely, we've talked about improving the storytelling experience in New World since we launched. Even before that, we were kind of thinking, hey, maybe some things we can do. And, right here, this is our first chance where we really, massively changed not just the quest, but the story, the characters, the dialogue in so many ways. And yeah, right at the beginning, you crash on the beach, and really to bring home kind of the threat and what's going, you're going to start hearing a voice in your head. I guess I'll leave it a mystery maybe for people who may.
I think most people should have played by now. Well, we can say it's the Tempest.
It's the Tempest.
The Tempest is now
voice of the
whispering.
Tempest.
Yes.
It is the seductive voice of corruption,
There you
who
go.
who may be both taunting and trying to recruit you.
Mhm.
And yeah, she'll start talking to you right away, kind of like giving you a hint of like the larger threat and where that's going. And then when the player gets out on the beach, it's a totally different series of quests there. The players will get to meet an all new character. Like the characters will actually move around on the beach, and the story unfolds
But
as they
there's
move.
one particular character that we've invested more time into.
So we wanted to create a character who was really a companion, who felt like someone that joined the player right at the beginning of the game, and stays with you throughout your journey and is really a sounding board. Somebody else who's kind of going through the experience of being on this strange island with you, and that's Grace O'Malley, a pirate who's, she doesn't have the best morals, but she's a fun
A pirate,
pal.
right?
Yeah, I mean she's a pirate,
Middling moral fiber.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and a historical figure, so you can look her up on Wikipedia. But she's not all that on Wikipedia is
I was
true,
going to
of
say
course, yeah.
a critical source for the truth.
Yeah, exactly.
This,
On the
this
internet.
this one closer to the truth.
Well, if it's on the internet,
it's
it's
on
true.
the internet. It's probably.
Well, it
true.
doesn't have the part though where she came to Aeternum, which is what I'm saying. Like that part.
Oh yeah, that part
entirely
has been
inaccurate.
scrubbed
Slightly
a little
fixed,
bit.
yeah.
Yeah, they even say that she died. Whatever.
So, but now we're presenting the player with kind of like multiple paths to,
Right.
experience along this new journey.
Right. So with the two starting zones, both Monarch's Bluffs and Windsward, each one has a totally different story. They both delve very much into these areas grappling with the threat of the lost. Even though corruption is kind of breathing down from the north, they're still dealing with this terrible threat of people turning lost in the area. And in Windsward, we very much have this story around a druidic group and Medea, the witch from mythology.
Mhm.
And then in Monarch's Bluffs, we've leaned heavier into the Arthurian mythology, and a lot of some characters there, and the whole we've really revamped the zone dramatically. So-
What
That's
other
an understatement. I think.
Yeah, it is. Like some of the new vistas and new POIs, and I know people get super attracted to the castles and stuff. Like Monarchs is really awesome that way. But some of the newer sets and the designs around Medea and the druids and the
And the knights.
Iron
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 Rose.
Rose.
Iron
Yeah.
Rose estate, like those things are pretty impressive as well. And some of the puzzles that we've integrated throughout. So with that, I kind of wanted to lead that over to Rosie as a segue. Is like, with all this new storytelling, like how did we, approach that with art, like in our layouts and our designs there?
Well, of course, we wanted to support the Arthurian look and feel with castles because everyone loves
Castles
to
are
see
cool.
that.
Castle
Yeah.
vibes, yeah.
And we also wanted to have a feeling, no matter where you are within the settlement, you know where you are. So you're never confused about which one you're in. So now they are all really different from each other. And it has that castle vibe, but it also has vistas of, from the castles, you can see different vistas from around the world, which are sort of leading the player and showing the player, where they've been and where they might go in the future.
Yeah, I actually like that foreshadowing in the Monarch starting beach because
Oh,
as you look out like past the ship where you first meet Grace, like you see Gawain's castle in the background.
Little
It's like
peekaboo
silhouetted,
view.
depending on time of day, and you're just like, am I gonna get to go there?
Yes, exactly.
And you don't exactly go to that one first, but
Right.
the fact when you get the lead into the big settlement, you're like, wow, it's so much
Yes.
more impressive than it
So
was
cool.
before.
Exactly. Yeah, that was what we were going for, was that big wow moment of entering the castle and just feeling like, wow, I'm in the Arthurian legend now.
Yeah, and we got all new enemies, right? Like we got
Mm.
the Lost Knights, who are the remnant of Arthur's knights from way long ago. And as the players play through this zone, there's much like the quests are going to be streamlined. The story unfolds as you move through the zone, as opposed to having to come back to the settlement every 10 minutes, which I think is a thing that many players have been clamoring for.
Yes, we wanted these tighter loops with our quest hubs and when you were doing activities and then coming back before you did the next, nice chunk. So we also integrated a lot more spirit shrines as well. So in order to teach fast travel to players, but also to have these nice accessible points, so you could keep coming back and forth between, places where you wanted to go quest or you're ready to turn in. So decide you went off the beaten path. Maybe I want to go mine a ton of ore
Yeah.
or do whatever.
One fast travel's not as expensive as it used to be.
Yeah, it's totally affordable. We also still give you a bunch of Azoth in the early quests as well. And that's one of my favorite feelings in the early quests and early player experience in our game is just you go out, you do all your quests, you do some gathering, you do some hunting, you get, you're full, you're near encumbered, and then you just are able to zip back to the town and unload, and that feels so good. Turn all the quests, go refine all your materials, craft some stuff. It's so good.
With his hat and his excitement, I'm just giddy. So one of the other things that I really liked is all these new gimmicks that we started introducing into the RSE. Like one of my favorite POIs is the Canis POI. That we've kind of redone. Beautiful interior and layout that was done by, was it Tia and Austin?
Leah
and Austin.
Leah Jong. Not in Austin.
Oh, I thought Austin was the.
Oh, and Austin.
And
Yes,
Austin
I'm
is
sorry.
the world
Yes,
designer. So it
yes.
was both of them together. It was such an amazing space to dive into.
Yes,
And
literally. You
yeah,
dive
literally you
into-
dive into it.
Yeah, so it's a totally new way of entering and going through and experiencing a whole POI.
It's giving you that tease of ancient technology that you get to experience in Starstone later, but earlier on. So it's like a maze of laser puzzles with cool little secrets behind little corridors, and something that players haven't got a chance to do yet. And it's just some of those things that we're starting to incorporate, like the glyph puzzles and some of the dynamic encounters that happen too, like aboard like the incoming pirate ship. that
Incoming
you have to-
pirate ship, yeah, and you shoot the cannon and
Oh yeah.
it calls the pirate ship in, and then you've got to battle them, and you have a quest to like that pops up to go kill the captain. It's really cool.
And shooting the cannon to open up sections of caverns.
Right.
Oh,
yeah.
that's a lot
you
of
go
fun.
through. Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
there's tons of honestly like tons of traversal puzzles that we put in that are like it
Yeah.
just totally changes the game. Like I think mantling around in our game is one of the highlights. Like I actually enjoy moving around and like figuring the ways out to climb up to the space I'm trying to get to is that's one of my favorite things in all the new quests.
I do like it when I get to go prone though. I
Yeah,
just,
yeah.
you know,
And that
crawl
specifically
give you a
the
reason.
cannons, it's kind of fun. It's
Yeah.
fantasy.
I like all the variety too of all these new ways of interacting with things.
Yeah, we've added a lot to the Quest IOs and did a major overhaul in the amount of like, it shouldn't be like standard kill quests or go loot a chest. So it's a lot more,
variety.
Very
Yeah.
few of those at this
story driven.
point.
Yeah.
And we've added a lot more mini bosses, right? Like with actually
Mm.
like some interesting dynamics in the fights. I
Mhm.
mean, Gawain's there,
Yeah.
Medea's there, and like those are great fights. But there's plenty more like in the middle of
Yeah.
each quest series.
Yeah.
Yep.
And you don't just go straight to kill them. You have to do other things as you're doing it.
Yeah, and with all those additions, like we've sped up leveling and rewards as well, right, Phil?
Oh, yeah, incredibly. We've sped up the leveling, so the amount of XP that you need to get from levels 1 to 60 overall has been sped up a lot. And the best source now officially is the quests and the main storyline quests. So we have taken some back from the territory projects because like those were kind of a weird way where you could kind of subvert going through the experience, learning about the Tempest, learning about the threat to Aeternum. And we really want that to be the main avenue that players are progressing their characters. We also added a little bit more XP now too from reading lore pages and just general harvest or gathering, I should say, not just harvesting, but like, gathering things in the world, gathering materials. And so all that I think just kind of leads you to it's just a well-balanced, smooth progression up. We're feeling really good about it. I think we've gotten some really great feedback too that it's starting to feel really fun. And then the other thing I'm really proud of is the rewards now for the starter zones in Everfall are now we've gotten rid of all of the weapon and armor boxes there, and all the rewards now are very intentional. And that starts from the beach. So when you land on the beach, you will see some different items strewn about the areas we're sending you to. So it's
Like
kind
in
of like
wreckage or caverns.
Mhm.
And yeah, you get to discover something that you might want to use.
exactly hidden off in a corner of a boar cave or
I
something.
think if you look
potentially.
around, you can find almost every weapon if you look hard enough. Some of them
Yeah.
are
Yep.
hidden in some pretty obscure places.
Yeah, some of them are
it's-
hidden, some of them are more breadcrumbed along the experience, but like, you can discover weapons and you can get access to that combat fantasy that you want just from the get-go of the game. Like you should be able to just kind of find something that really feels good to you. So like I'm a blunderbuss player a lot too. So like the fact that I can find one of that before I get to town and have fun just shotgunning random corrupted baddies on the beach, like that's awesome.
Yeah. You mentioned the territory projects. I was just going to call it like, but we're increasing the amount of territory experience they give you. But I mean, what I think is so exciting about that is it gets back to the idea that, when you're doing those, you're improving your standing with the town. And like, I actually hope too that with the more unique aspects that we've done to each one of the towns and Monarchs particularly, and in Everfall, where Everfall is a really unique look.
Yeah, total
like,
overhaul.
Yeah, having loyalty to those and doing the projects, I think really, I don't know, it makes me feel more like I want this to be my hometown because I really like the way it looks.
Right.
And Everfall's theme is like dramatic, very different from
Yeah.
Monarchs.
All different material types, and it's a completely different look and feel.
What's the inspiration behind Everfall?
It's more of like more of an industrial-ish kind of
Mhm.
look, like almost Victorian, brick and mortar, I should say,
Yeah.
with copper roofs.
Copper roofs,
And,
Yeah.
yeah,
beautiful teal patina on there.
exactly. Yeah.
Ooh,
So you're
love
getting
it.
like new colors, just like I was saying, when you're in Everfall, you know exactly where you are at all times.
Mhm. So I have a house in Everfall. Now, when all this art changes and everything, am I still gonna have my same house?
Yeah, there's a small chance that your furniture might be packaged up and you'll have to place it again.
Redecorate
Potentially,
the new
yeah.
space?
Or
Just-
something might be off just a smidge. We
Yeah,
try to
or might-
maintain the layouts as close to possible,
Mhm.
like for the volume of space.
But it's still
But
gonna
there's
be
some
nice,
there could be a circumstance where
that's all right.
something's moved.
New house decoration,
Yeah.
make sure the feng shui is correct in the
Yeah.
new spot.
Well, one other thing I wanted to touch on before we wrap things up is the enclaves, because I think
Mm.
those are awesome new additions that like really celebrate and highlight the factions more.
Yeah, we really, I mean, we wanted the joining a faction to be something that players did because they were excited about the factions, not necessarily something they were forced into.
Mhm.
And now you really get to like go and meet the factions, and you get to have a story quest with them where you get to know them, and eventually you get to come to the Enclave, where each one is, it kind of blew us away when we saw what you guys did.
Really
It's
impressive.
that home base that it has its signature and really feels like you belong to it and it has its place in the world.
Yeah, again, you get a real sense of what these factions are, what they're all about, and like what the mood is when you join them. So you understand them fully.
Yeah, the Syndicate's totally.
Oh, it's like
creepy.
buried like
yeah.
in this
Yeah.
cave and not
Oh,
this
yeah.
cave, just
They have
buried.
different laboratories and things on the inside and all their experiments going off. But then you
Yeah.
go to like the Covenant and it's this massive cathedral with just,
just outside like a haunted graveyard.
yeah, it's really
course.
cool.
As you do.
Yeah.
And then the Marauders one's
Just
awesome
out in the
too. Like,
wilds.
it's so like
Yeah.
magnificent and proud, and it's
Mhm.
cool. Yeah, and we should also mention. I mean, the main story quest through Everfall is much tighter. This is really, as you mentioned, like Monarchs and Windsward are absolutely about these, Sir Gawain and these stories that are happening there. But now in Everfall, players really get to travel with Jonas, learn more about the Soul Wardens, and the whole experience is really like cultivated, I'd say now, with side quests to complement, and you really feel like you're traveling through the zone and exploring new areas.
And it's no longer mandatory for a solo player to go into an expedition to go through the main story.
Yeah,
So
all the main
there's
story quests
there's
have-
all single player focused versions of the MSQ to get you past those points.
all the way up into the Tempest Heart.
Yes.
TBD on that.
So you heard it here.
No, it's kind of an important moment,
It is. It's
yeah.
that culmination of everything.
Yeah. What
Yeah.
the whispers lead you up to.
Yeah, it's worth calling out too. We skipped over the idea that in addition to the Whispers, you're also going to see a cinematic early in the starter beach where you'll learn more about the Tempest, like learn more about Isabella's past, in fact, which is kind of cool there. And then we have some more of those elsewhere in the game.
Yeah,
too.
animated sequences and then actual cinematics at play.
Yeah, we're
Mhm.
getting a lot more capability there. Having a lot more fun with
Yeah.
the tools.
Well, all awesome stuff. Thanks everybody,
Mhm.
and happy
Thanks,
birthday,
Mike.
Aeternum.
Yeah.
Happy birthday.
Oh, there it is.
There.
Hey everybody, welcome back. I'm joined again by Rob, and this time with David and Charles, and we're going to be talking about all things Brimstone Sands. Super exciting. It's our brand new zone, a giant zone, and I want to start things off talking about the lore, because right when you enter the zone, one of the first things that you see just out there on the horizon is this giant pyramid. What's that about, Rob?
There's a giant pyramid. There's a giant statue of a Roman general. Like there's
Big landmarks and fixtures in this desert.
it's huge. I mean, the zone's huge, and everything in it is huge. And I mean, story-wise, the story of Brimstone Sands is very rooted in world history. It's the history of if you've read your history books or if you watch the HBO series Rome, then you're familiar with what happened when Mark Antony and Cleopatra were finally cornered in Alexandria, and there's a whole story about what happened to them. But it's not actually the truth, and the truth is that they fled to Aeternum,
Of course.
and that is the
course.
idea in
Yeah, I
Brimstone
knew.
Sands. Yeah, you knew
Yeah,
that.
I do.
You figured it all along. I mean, HBO kind of hinted at it because they knew what was coming. But yeah, and so, but of course, when they got here, so you had this Roman legion and some Egyptians who came here. They discovered that there was an Egyptian civilization that had been here much longer than that, with some famous figures from history that you'll meet in your quest series there. Imhotep for one to call out, and you'll meet some others. But yeah, so it's this clash of the Romans and then these ancient Egyptians who really saw the ancients as gods when they first came here, and then the whole story plays out. It's pretty epic, and as it needs to be, just to take you across that zone because there's a lot going on.
Yeah, it feels like that that early trailer that we had watching the Romans take that jewel.
Right.
Like we have like callbacks to that several times.
Yeah, we do. Yeah, we call back to that in the main story a few times, and I
Been
mean,
the plan all along.
exactly.
Hear it right here.
The Romans are always the evil ones, unfortunately. Although the Egyptians are a little evil in this too. I mean, I guess maybe there's a little good and evil on both sides.
In all of us. Maybe.
And yeah, maybe.
Oh, that's pretty profound.
Yeah.
But
yeah, for
everyone
sure.
walks the gray. Like you're not quite sure who your friends or your enemies are in Brimstone.
Right.
You gotta
Yeah,
kinda
we definitely
figure
are
that
finding out, and I mean that's an important thing to call out because we defeated the Tempest, we defeated Isabella in back in Shadow Mountain, and here this is the opening up of a whole new chapter and storyline with the next big villain you're going to fight, who is an ally you had in the first act, and it's okay to go ahead and just dive in there, right? I mean, yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
We kind of hinted at it already. quite
Yeah,
a bit.
so yeah, we did. Yeah, Adiana, who was you're the huntress that worked with you to defeat Isabella, ultimately turns out to be the ancient Artemis, who is a very powerful being and very angry with humanity, and so her ultimate motives are kind of start getting surfaced here in Brimstone.
Mhm.
She's not quite happy with what you did to the mother well.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. You don't mess with the mother. She kind of reluctantly lets you do it, but she's kind of harbors a grudge.
Mhm.
Yeah.
It's terrible of her.
Yeah. Well, I
Really.
mean, humans kind of mess up everything.
So with all this new story, obviously we had to have new POIs, new designs, new mechanics. David, what can you tell us about some of the new stuff that we put in here?
I am so excited because Brimstone, as you've heard, is the largest zone we've made so far. It's
About two and a half times as big.
2 to 3,
Two to
yeah.
three. It's huge.
We have spent countless hours packing this zone with as much unique content, hidden content, secrets, collectibles. Our POIs have tall verticality structures you can climb. Almost every POI can be climbed. There's jumping puzzles, there's platforming puzzles, there's cliffside ruins, Roman forts, sulfur pools. It's a lot of content. It's a lot of unique content, and I can't wait to see what players think of it. I think it sets a new standard for open world interactables and small little dynamic things you can find on the road. It has the most random roadside encounters of any zone so far, and there's a lot to unpack. Do we have the rest of the day to talk about it? Because
Yeah,
I
there's
could
a
talk
lot.
all day.
Yeah.
Well, when the credits roll, we'll make sure that you're talking while we see everything. But some of my favorites are I love the wall, I love the aqueduct, I love the Acropolis. Some of the climbing mechanics that are integrated into there that you're not like, oh, I wasn't sent here, but all of a sudden I discovered something and I keep climbing and I find and discover say like an ancient glyph and decipher it, and now I get to use it to unlock either like a one-way portal or one of the new chest unlocks. There's some really cool mechanics that we've started to integrate.
Yeah, the ancient glyphs are a really exciting system. There's 26 of them. They are the secret language of the ancients that you have to discover buried in the sands. And each one has a different meaning that the players will unlock. Using that power, you can open up two-way portals across the zone. You can unlock secret chests in the bowels of a giant labyrinth. You can lower magical walls and unveil secret rooms. There's a lot of cool things you can do with them, and hopefully we can continue to add to this system in the future.
Yeah, and of course, one of them is where you get your first heart rune. But the POI where you do that is, I mean, amazing.
Yeah,
Like,
It's like two-sided, right? So it's like you have one side of this giant wall where you go to get your heart rune and go through that experience, and then the whole other side is elite, right?
Yes, it's probably our biggest POI we've ever built, and the artist on it is just done a phenomenal job of adding secret alcoves and hidden closets and climbing portions that take you to new sweeping vistas. It's pretty incredible. You can scour the battlements for treasure, dive into the bowels, and unlock all sorts of secret hidden treasures. So
Yeah, I mean,
it's great.
that's a perfect segue because what I want to talk about is like all these like vistas and landmarks. Charles, if you can touch on the art, because
Sure.
the art is massively compelling because it's a brand new biome, something that we haven't seen in Aeternum. You want to take us through
Sure.
some
No,
of that?
I mean it's a massive desert, but desert means a lot of different things. Like real deserts all over the world, they're very different. There's sub-biomes, there's different areas. So we wanted to capture a lot of that. Like we have areas with big sweeping sand dunes, and you get that like I'm lost in the Sahara or something vibe. But then there's like deep crevasses that you go down into canyons. There's a lot of cave structures. There's a more coastal desert vibe. There's like
Yeah.
different sub areas. And then there's the sulfur pits, which is a whole like chemical desert vibe, and it's a whole other treatment, and there's a lot of creatures that come with that that you won't find anywhere else. And like the overall take, we really like epic desert was something we really wanted to go for and have it feel really different than the rest of the world. We've done a ton of different like forests and different like very lush biomes, and here it's a very different vibe. And there's stuff we had to do even to achieve that, because like the way our terrain system works, the way materials are spread out, we can't just lean on that like heavy vegetation that we do in other zones. So here we had to go a lot deeper into like how do we present sand dunes and like all the different ways the sand patterns move and how the wind moves the dunes, and like there's a whole system that we had to figure out how to present there to players that a ton of work went into like to pull off. But
I was going to say too that I mean the desert wouldn't be complete without the ancient ruins. And I think I mean we have ancient ruins all over the game, but Brimstone really takes it to another level. Like
Yeah.
it feels like we go much deeper into what was possible that the ancients might have built.
There's definitely like an escalation of like you get hints of ancient all over, but here they're expressed a little more extreme. It's like hearkening to like a lot of ruins around Egypt and some of these like massive monuments that you see in real life, and sort of bringing that to Aeternum and oversizing it maybe even a little more, because everything in Aeternum is just sort of elevated more. They had the power of Azoth to build, and then even going to the settlement is like there's this oasis built in the middle, and Romans in real history are like known as industrious builders, and so we wanted to present that like, oh, a Roman built settlement here, and like what could that be, and all the life and like interesting nooks and crannies all over that settlement. It's bigger than any settlement we have prior to this point. It's sprawling way more, and I think there's a lot of cool interesting houses for players to get and interesting landmarks there too.
Surely we're charging more for those houses, right? Like to live in Brimstone should be like a premium.
I don't know. I think we want players to come there. Like this is their new home.
I would. I mean, I certainly will actually.
There's one
that's amazing.
particular house that is 3 floors. It's got a beautiful view of the giant colossus right in the middle of town. That's probably the one I'm going to get.
Pretty cool.
Yeah, New Corsica. That's the name of that settlement.
And you know, in addition to, I mean, the ancient ruins, the set pieces are amazing, and then the enemies too. Like the Nubian guards are like fantastic. They're some of my favorite ancient enemies I fought.
And these are not just copy paste or recolors of our ancient guardians. These have new kits, new spells, new abilities that the players are going to have to discover and figure out how to defend from.
With these type of cats and the giant scarabs and scorpions and the sulfur lizards, which are crazy scary. There's some big
Grilled
beasts
lizards
out there.
that shoot acid at you.
Yeah, and the other enemy families with the dust phantoms. And then obviously you have the Roman Legion that are there, and they have some
Yeah, there's a pretty cool
gnarly
backstory
characters.
to the corrupted legion too, because you know, of course, the Romans and the Egyptians both arrived here at the same time, and then over time they had a falling out between them over you know, do we want to activate all these ancient technologies? The Egyptians kind of believed, or some of the Egyptians believed, hey, these are, you know, gifts from the gods. We should turn these things on. And you know, General Crassus, the Roman general, was like, I don't know about that. And ultimately, what happened is he got all the Romans, the legion got turned to stone as part of a spell that was cast from the Ennead, and then when they came out, they became corrupted, and now they're kind of the first immediate threat when you get into the zone. But I think they're fantastic. They're some of my favorite corrupted enemies for sure.
And then there's one other really big thing that just roams around.
Yeah.
And some people might have gotten glimpses of it early, but you're guaranteed to see it in the PTR. Well, if you're lucky. It's a big, scary beast that roams the sands.
But you can't fight that.
You
Like,
can't fight
you're gonna
that.
kill you.
No,
like,
no,
in a
it's too
heartbeat.
big.
Yeah.
It's too big.
It actually does kill you if you stand too close to it.
So you
if
can hear it coming though.
If you
they-
hear a
they-
rumble and something that looks like a small volcano or a fissure, just run. Just get out of the way.
There's so much to talk about in Brimstone. Like, I mean, one thing I would say for sure, like, if you played through other parts of the game and you went looking for things, you explored and looked for something, and got frustrated you didn't find something, like if you explore in Brimstone, you're gonna find cool things, and I guarantee you're not gonna find them all. It's gonna take some time because there's so much that you guys have put in. It's amazing.
Yeah. Check behind waterfalls. Check behind. Check underneath
Classic advice.
platforms.
Check the roads, do drop downs, because there was one that I found outside of where the Heart Rune quest is. It's a series of like drop downs from, I think it was like nests.
Oh, on the
Yeah.
cliffside.
And you could see it, and it was like on a cliff. And if you mapped it out, you're like, oh, wait a minute, I see something twinkling down there. And it was another glyph that you could acquire. And I thought that was super.
We have
neat.
jumping puzzles, and that's an example of a falling puzzle.
Yeah,
So-
yeah.
Didn't know we did that.
So you just got to keep wary. I think that's going to wrap it up for now. Really interested to hear your feedback from the PTR. We're very excited about this zone and what it's going to bring to Aeternum. But anyhow, happy birthday, Aeternum.
Yeah, this is your gift for the first year. It's a Brimstone Sands, a pretty good gift.
Yeah.
Happy birthday.
Hello, we're here to discuss the Heartgem today. It's one of our new features. It's going to be adding an extra ability to our players. So I'm gathered here today with Phil over here, a product owner for Open World Systems. And we got Rob over here, who's our narrative director, and Kyle, our senior gameplay engineer. So let's get down to it. Let's hear the lore behind these Heartgems.
Cool. So as you guys should know from playing through the main story, players first get their Heartgem. It's they insert this gem into their chest.
Insert. That was very gentle way of putting it, right?
A nice way of saying it. Yes.
Yeah.
The idea behind the gem is that it protects the player's soul from becoming corrupted or becoming lost. And this is part of becoming a soul warden in the game. And of course, indeed, like it's pretty grim way you have to insert this into your chest. You have to actually die to put it in there.
There
And
you
the
go.
players do that early in the main story. And now, as they've advanced farther, and particularly in Brimstone Sands, players discover that there are opportunities to improve their Heartgem. And the Heartgem, basically they go around the world, they find these ancient glyphs, and then they can take these glyphs and inscribe them on their Heartgem as a heart rune. And these give them powers that have, latent powers from that have hidden off on the island. Whether they come from the ancients or they come from some other elemental power on the island. They come from a lot of different places. And then of course, the cool thing is cool. As cool as the story bit is around them, and you get it by doing a quest with the Soul Wardens in Brimstone Sands. But once we try one of these, that's where it really gets awesome.
Yeah, I think it's a really exciting piece of progression because you have that really dramatic moment early on in the game. Now to call back to that and actually use that to, enhance your playable character. Now it's gonna be really cool.
Yeah, we planned it this way all along, of course.
Of course.
Of course. Well, speaking of enhancing your character, so just the functionality behind the Heartgems, one of it's basically a fourth active ability now. So we're going to have another button to press, which is really exciting for us. One of the bigger things for this is a character base, so it does not matter what weapon you have. So it's going to go right onto your character, which is really neat and opens up a world of opportunity as we move forward with these. And we also have a new way of implementing. We usually have cooldown timers on all our abilities, but this time we actually went with a meter. And Kyle, I know you worked on that. Do you want to give some info?
So one of the big things we had to do to implement this was we had to implement a new charge meter. You'll build charge just by playing the game, attacking, getting attacked, healing, getting healed, just your typical combat situations. And then once the meter is completely filled, you can press the button and unleash your chosen Heartgem.
Nice.
And it charges up pretty fast, right? Like,
We've tried to tune it to about, if you're actively playing, about once every minute or so,
That's
give
pretty good.
or take.
Yeah.
So when you're actively engaged in war, that was kind of what we were going for, like one use per minute or so.
What if I'm getting smacked around by a lot of mobs in a POI or something?
You'll get charged from that too.
Yeah.
Yep.
Will it charge faster the more damage, from damage or from attack? Is there a bias?
The way we've tuned it right now is you'll get a little more charge by doing the attacking,
Yeah, okay.
not as much charge by getting smacked around, but I mean, you'll still
All right.
build it.
So
if
there's
you're
some
getting
hope for
your
me.
butt kicked. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Okay.
Well, and
Good.
and the abilities themselves, they're not, they're obviously not themed after the weapons, but like where did all these ideas come from? Like,
So our abilities are definitely themed from some of our expeditions. So for instance, one of our abilities is a cannon blast, where you basically whip out a cannon and shoot a projectile at people. So, and that comes from B&B, Barnacles and Black Powder. And so every one of these is going to be themed after some type of enemy, some type of expedition or something in that nature. Which leads me to like, how do we actually get these?
Sure. Yeah. Let me go into that. So to acquire the original Heartgem, the heart runes that you inscribe on your Heartgem, they come from expeditions primarily, and so in all of our endgame dungeons, Genesis, Lazarus, Tempest, Barnacles and Black Powder, and now the new Ennead, you'll be able to get a tier 1 heart rune that unlocks a unique ability. And those about a 10% drop chance from the bosses there. So that's where you get your tier 1. And then we have 3 tiers. And as you tier it up, it gets more and more powerful. And you actually have a little bit of a choice at unlocking specific different perks at tier 3, which is really cool. And there's going to be a lot of different ways that players can kind of theory craft with that. And to do that, I mean, it's truly an endgame pursuit and what we want it to do. It's an endgame special ability. To do that, we're requiring you to get like some endgame mats. There's some Brimstone specific materials you'll need to pick up. There's gypsum orbs, which we haven't done before, that actually feed into the recipe here to level it up, as well as just some other unique mats too per the type of heart, the heart rune that you're going for.
of course,
Yeah,
you get your first one though by doing the quest that unlocks it.
that's right.
Important to note. So look for that in North Brimstone.
Mm-hmm.
About halfway through the Brimstone storyline, that unlocks.
Yep.
And, you get Cannon Blast with that, right?
I believe our first one is
think
Cannon
so,
Blast.
yeah.
I think that's the one.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but in Brimstone, in the Ennead though, when you're completing that expedition, that's where you would get the detonate one, and that's really cool. And so like that's more thematic to that expedition, the power of the sulfuric sands and the acid, and stuff that goes boom. It's really exciting. I don't know. I think it's going to add a ton of depth to gameplay. Yeah.
Greatsword and Cannon Blast is definitely.
that what
That's
you're
how
going
I've play tested all of Brimstone with that.
Well, it's really nice because like you've got your melee build, and then the Cannon Blast gives you that ranged element to just plow through maybe some mobs attacking you.
Yeah.
That's really cool.
Definitely massive power.
Yeah, it is good. The abilities, you can use them to slot in things you don't have on your normal weapons, right? Like, so if you're a healer, let's say, and you want to not get CC'd, you can pop Stone Form, which will let you not get CC'd for 5 seconds.
And
Right?
you can move around with it,
Yep.
right? Which makes it a little bit more useful potentially than like Ice Tomb.
Yep,
Yeah.
exactly. All right, well, we're excited for everybody to come out to play this. We're excited for our anniversary bash. There's so much new stuff in the game that we're really, really, really excited for everybody to come back and play.
Yeah, keep in mind, this is our first anniversary, so super exciting, but many more to come.
Heck yeah.
Yeah, thanks everyone.
Hello, today we're going to be talking about the Greatsword. My name's David Furfai. I'm joined with Dave Hall, our lead gameplay designer, Jean-Anne Willard, our audio director, and Patrick Smedley, an AI designer. To kick it off, Dave, why don't you give us a brief overview of the Greatsword for people who haven't played it yet in PTR?
Awesome. Yeah, so the Greatsword is our new two-handed weapon. It's based on strength and dex, and it is very unique for us. So we're actually going to start doing stances with this weapon. So it has 2 trees. One is called the Onslaught tree, and that's the attacking type of stance. So it's more aggressive. You get more damage there, but you also take more damage. And the other one is the Defiance tree, which is the defensive style, which you're going to take less damage, but then deal out less damage also. And it's a really interesting new mechanic for us, and we're hoping it's going to lead to people being able to switch between going defensive and tanking and going on to attack modes also.
Cool. You said it was scales with strength and dex. What's the math behind that scaling?
It's 50-50 right now, and unlike the other ones that we've done. So it's a brand new for us, and it should pair nicely with a lot of different weapons.
Cool. Well, good segue. Thanks, Dave. Speaking of builds and theory crafting, have Patrick or anyone, have you guys thought a little bit about how you might use the Greatsword, what builds are, what you might pair it with?
Yeah, I've thought a good bit about that. So the onslaught tree in particular, I'm really excited about for PvE content, getting in there and dealing lots and lots of damage to bosses while my healers keep me up and prevent me from dying. It's going to be great. And then for kind of large-scale PvP content, Outpost Rush, Wars, and other things, I'm really looking forward to a kind of stance-dancey build where I use a little bit of the Defiance tree, coupled with some of the onslaught abilities too.
Cool. Let's talk like favorite ability, Dave. What's your favorite ability on the Greatsword?
I think it's going to be Skyward Slash right now. I just really, really enjoy that tactile feel when you hit that button at the top of the arc and come flying down with that swipe. It's just really, really fun.
You have to upgrade to get that
Yeah,
second
that's
ability.
the first upgrade on it, I believe.
How about you, Jed?
I love the shield. Unfortunately, I can't remember the name of the ability.
Okay. Cool. And Patrick?
I like crosscut. The 1, 2, 3 of these swings there, it just feels really impactful and powerful to me.
Cool. Next, we're going to talk a little bit about art. I'll talk a little bit about the art part of it. So the Greatsword is obviously the newest weapon. It was inspired a little bit by the Roman gladius, right? Because it's released with Brimstone Sands. And it was like, how would we take a gladius and turn it into a big two-handed weapon? When you see some of the concept art and the art team, that's sort of what their original inspiration was. They took inspirations from a lot of different civilizations that have two-handed greatswords. And what's great is like, as we introduce it to the game, there's gonna be drops, you know, in Ebon Scale and in Garden of Genesis, and each of these have very unique and different looks. I think it's gonna be great. There's also gonna be a skin that comes out with it in October also.
wow.
So the art is looking great. And what about the sound, Jed? What was some inspiration behind the sound? How did you create some of the sounds? Tell us about the soundscape of the Greatsword.
So, well, actually, this weapon was created by Tony Martinez, and it was his first weapon. But it goes back to a recording session that we did actually at HEMA, H-E-M-A. It's the Historical European Martial Arts.
Wow.
And yeah, it was pretty cool. We went there recording people fighting with real swords and shields. And it was epic. It was very dangerous and threatening. And we're like, wow, we got some great materials. And we came back to the studio, listened to those sounds, and everything sounded very thin and tiny. You know, like how, you know, ting, 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 like a lot of like slashes that feel like, you know, noisy, harsh, not really the great qualities that we're looking for. So when Tony actually took on the task of creating the new palette for the Greatsword, it looked at making it more, you know, like elusive, more less predictable and powerful. And one of the happy accidents that happened is during one of the mornings he was working on the weapon, he made coffee and he forgot to remove to put the pot underneath the coffee machine. And so those coffee drips that were like evaporating on the hot metal became one of his source of inspiration for the weapon. And it created that, you know, sensation of like, you don't want to be burned. It's dangerous. It's threatening. It's the elements that were missing from like the HEMA recordings. And so we took those recordings, processed them, distorted them, layered them with like some reverse metal, and it created this like new out of the world, you know, magical sonic tonality that we use throughout all the abilities. And it's one of the aspects that we love doing with sounds. You know, it's always trying to find the most familiar sounds, but the least predictable. We want to surprise our audience, you know, with things that they've never heard of before, but also make them feel like it's still something familiar they've listened to before. Some of the examples, for example, would be with the fire staff. No one probably, you know, realized, but we use like an A10 bomber for like the meteor shower. It creates like these, you know, kind of sounds. We use like a rocket launch, you know, for the heavy fireball. When you hear it in the air and it's crackling through, you know, like the sky, it's actually a rocket launch. We use like trains coupling for like the great axe spinning ability. I think it's called whirlwind. And then
you remember that one? No.
yeah, that one, yeah. Just because the Greatsword is too new, but yeah, we love, you know, trying to surprise the audience with things that, you know, we put a sound that feels satisfying, satisfaction for weapon when you whack, you know, the bosses in the environment or like other players. You know, it creates like a little dose of dopamine that makes you feel good.
Yeah, it's cool. And I think, you know, the sound design in our game is awesome. And I love that you give just as much attention to the weapons as you do the gathering, because that's what always gets called out, right? Like, but the weapons get just as much love. Well, we have an AI designer here with us. Let's talk a little bit about like, how is the Greatsword going to handle AI combat? Anything special there? Anything you want to call out?
Yeah, absolutely. So I do a lot of tanking. So it's going to be a great weapon to pair with your sword and shield. Most players use sword and shield as their primary weapon for tanking, and kind of what you're using as an offhand has changed. Some players use spear, a lot of players use great axe and warhammer. A few like myself prefer the hatchet. But the Greatsword, the entire Defiance tree is really geared well towards tanking. A lot of the abilities generate passive threat on top of the taunt gem compatibility there. You have abilities like Roaring Rupture, which will taunt, and then also empower players nearby. So it's a great way to make sure that your teammates are kind of getting buffs there. So it's going to really help our tank players kind of maintain control of the encounter while also supporting the other members of their party. On the other side there, though, you also have the Onslaught tree, which is going to deal a lot of damage. So I expect for some more melee-focused encounters, things like the Greenskeeper and Chartist, you're going to really want to keep a Greatsword in your repertoire just to deal a ton of damage to those enemies.
And Dave, when you were designing the Greatsword, was it like, I know Spear is a little more single target focused, where the Great Axe is obviously more, cleaving through people. What was sort of the theory or the goal for the Greatsword?
Yeah, the Greatsword definitely was about multiple enemies for sure, and multiple hits, and also having range. That was one of the big things with it. It's such a large object in the world, right? Like, so we wanted to make sure it could reach really far. We wanted to also keep it on the Onslaught tree really fluid and fast. That's why we have a lot of the abilities are multi-hit abilities. They hit 3 times, 2 times, things of that nature. So I think it was about like creating a really aggressive offense. Some of the abilities will actually slow the enemy too, which will be great for PvP if you hit. And then on the defensive side, kind of like what Patrick was mentioning there, we really wanted to make sure we had another way to tank, not just sword and shield. So I think the defensive side of the tree is really going to help us with that.
Well, thanks. We're excited to see what you all do with the Greatsword. Tell us what your favorite builds and all that are. And congratulations, New World, birthday number 1. Woo! Woo!
Thank you for joining us once again, one last time. Let's hear it. We're going to be talking about the Ennead. So it's our brand new expedition in Brimstone Sands. And joining me for this segment, once again, is Rob. And then adjacent to him, I'm totally going to blank on Patrick's name, but it's Patrick. You know what's throwing me off, Patrick? This on his head. So if you didn't know, Patrick is already 6'8", and with the hat, he's now 9'10". And just to my left, TV right, is Darren. Say hello, Darren. So now, the Ennead. Let's talk about the story and its importance. We kind of touched a little bit about the giant pyramid as you entered Brimstone, but what's at the heart of this location?
Yeah, so as we mentioned, you'll see it right when you walk into Brimstone Sands. It's impossible to miss this giant pyramid glowing, partially glowing, when you walk into the zone. And that's the pyramid sits in the ancient city of Akhet, which was built by the ancient Egyptians that came here 3,000 years ago. And actually, this was concurrent with when the ancients were here. And although, we're not going to tell you everything about the ancients, but it's absolutely true that the ancients were here at the same time. They worked together with the Egyptians to build this city and this massive pyramid that houses the Ennead, which the Ennead itself is actually like the mechanism inside. It's the machine and the power that's inside of this pyramid. And yeah, the story behind it is, of course, that some years ago, so it was built originally by Imhotep along with the ancients, and then about 1,000 years ago, the Ennead was activated because the Egyptians who came a little bit later thought that there was the power of the gods they could unleash, and they unleashed it, and in fact ended up petrifying the Roman legion. And now the legacy of that is today with General Crassus and the corrupted legion, and they're still in conflict today, and he's back in there now, trying to redeem or to shut down or reacquire the power that he was that they looked for previously.
Now, with that awesome story and that backstory, that's kind of like leading to now we're designing this space. And so what are the things that you took into account with like that story and things that we've learned?
So it's not often as a level designer, right, that you get to literally go inside a giant pyramid on the mission to push the giant red button, right? Like that's the setup here. And right away, we knew that. We integrated it deeply in the level design. One of the things that I think we learned from the get-go with the Ennead Expedition was I wanted it to align with player goals on replays, because I didn't want people to get left out in the cold when they are on this territory quest, is what it actually is, right? The mechanics for getting the chest and the mechanics for turning on the giant red button initially are the same. They take you to the same corners of the dungeons. Oops, that's the
That's a
forbidden
dollar for
word,
the jar.
Dollar.
Expedition. You know what it is, but he still owes me $1.
And this is a very meat and potatoes dungeon crawl, and that's the correct word in this context.
Yes.
There's some labyrinths which I think fits the theme very well, and also some big chambers where aggro ranges become very important. There's multiple encounters in these chambers, and they lead pretty directly into multiple bosses. And I'll let you, Patrick, talk about that.
Yeah, sure. So this is our first 3-boss dungeon, which is something we're super excited about. Like Darren said, it's kind of meat and potatoes. You're getting in there and you're constantly fighting other enemies that lead up to these bosses very quickly. So you're really getting into the action very quickly, which makes it very fun. First boss you come across is, I'm going to butcher this name, but the Godland Capri, this giant scarab. Internally, we refer to him as the Disco Beetle.
Big beetle.
Big beetle, the Disco Beetle. This guy loves lasers, so when he pops the lasers out on the dance floor, it's time to get far, far away. His arena is really big, which lends itself well to a lot of space and players kind of moving around trying to avoid his kind of chaotic lasers. Really kind of chaotic fight that's a lot of fun. Second boss, the very feared kind of General Crassus, the leader of the Roman Legion. We build up to him a little bit in Brimstone, and then you finally get to fight him and his corrupted Roman Legion, which is just super exciting. You're not only dealing with like kind of the power that he has and like the mechanics that he has, but also all the soldiers that he's bringing along with him. And if you're not able to kind of maintain control of those soldiers, that fight's going to turn south really, really fast.
Yeah, there's a lot of management of the ads,
Yeah.
especially some of them get real brutal towards the end.
Oh yeah, third phase has these ogres, and those ogres will mess you up real fast if your tank is not, on it. And that leads us to our third boss, the Goliaths of the Ennead. These are two kind of ancient stone constructs come to life with ancient kind of magic to kind of defend the Ennead, and like they're the last line of defense before you get into that control console at the end there. Really tough fight. You got to kind of handle their mechanics well, but it's really important to remember that you can't kill one without killing the other. And I'll kind of leave that mechanic at that. So.
Yeah, I mean, just to call it out that the whole temple, like Darren said, is like a security system, right? Like this is this ancient power structure, and General Crassus is fighting his way through there. And I actually can't think of it off the top of my head, like how much of the dungeon is corrupt, or how much of the expedition is corrupted versus ancient.
About a third of the expedition is taken over by Crassus and his forces, and the expedition is pretty evenly divided into 3 islands, fitting the 3 different bosses.
Yeah. And then I was going to mention that, of course, that ultimately, what's this place protecting, right? Like Crassus is trying to get in there. We know there's something, and that's that red button back at the back, and we're not going to necessarily say everything about what's going on there, but suffice to say, if you achieve this, then something pretty cool can happen.
Yeah.
How many runs do you think before a player can achieve that?
It's really going to, this maps directly to a quest, and the objectives for this are actually outside of the expedition in that they're in the quest flow, not the expedition flow. And so it was a big deal for us. It's a little bit new to be tracking these individual objectives separate from the expedition flow. They should be able to do it in a run once they have the correct quest setting them up. And that's the part that I didn't want them to be getting left out in the cold, where their motivations were entirely different than players who are replaying this. And I think this expedition in general is going to have a ton of replay value. That's one of the things that we wanted to get out of it.
Yeah. So even if you haven't done all the quests leading up to it, running it'll be super rewarding. But and it's a pretty long quest line. I think there's probably 10 or 12 quests in that quest line before you get to the point where you actually go in there and challenge Crassus, and in the story actually deal with the mechanism that's inside there.
Yeah, I loved it. Like there's a definitive kind of like golden path you can take, but there's all these alcoves and different like clover leaves that can occur as you loop or double back, or you're just carving your way back onto the path. But nice open spaces, lots of named enemies, so there's always kind of something to go after. And then some of the new mechanics that I like there, with it's kind of like ancient guardian technology, these sentinels that cause different things to happen once they're alerted to your presence, where like spawns of enemies out of the walls and some other neat stuff happens with their presence.
Starstone Burrows, just to give some background, we talked about as sort of a Ocean's 11 movie, right? Like it was a jewelry heist, which it like literally is. And this was more like assaulting a bunker to push the giant red button. Like the forces know you're coming, you're fighting your way through them, and I think it came off well in terms of that.
Yeah. Mike mentions the kind of winding hallways of the expedition. I'm going to be really interested to see how that plays out in mutations, because there's not really a one clear path forward. So how the meta develops around whether you just rush to the end and get in and out as quickly as possible, or you stop and kill every single named enemy along the way. Like, I think players are going to have a lot of fun kind of figuring out that puzzle to maximize their score.
Yeah, and you got to wonder, so all these ancient guardians in there and all these security devices, and but no one knows what happened to the ancients or where they are or what they're up to or what this device might have to do with them. But suffice to say, there would be kind of scary to think about what might happen if the ancients were to come back, or I don't know. That's not going to happen. Not anytime soon.
Well, yeah. Well, who knows? Who knows?
There might be some ancients around. I mean,
Could be.
Yeah.
Lying dormant, just waiting.
Sleeping.
Could.
Yeah.
Well, we love what you've heard about the Ennead. We can't wait for you to jump into this expedition in the PTR and when it goes live. It's going to be a fantastic anniversary release. So, happy birthday, Aeternum. Here's to one awesome year. Can't wait for more to come.
Yeah, enjoy.
Woo! Well, we covered a lot today. Those deep dives in the making of segments, super informative. Thanks a lot for taking the time to do that, everybody. Before we go, we just want to give a couple quick updates. First off, the PTR is live, so if you want to check out Brimstone and our new starting experience, hop onto the forums if you need some information.
There's also there's some interesting stats we have here from the past year. There's too many to list, but we picked a couple that were just kind of interesting. There have been 6.3 billion trees felled in Aeternum. It's possible that there were a few bots in there, but we did ban those, and we're going to keep working on making sure that Aeternum's a clean environment for you folks to play in. There were 17.3 billion PvE kills, so you took care of a lot of the dangerous creatures in Aeternum during the last year. Scott, you have a couple here that you called out?
Yeah, 12.4 billion minutes streamed on Twitch. Wow, that's a lot of minutes. So thank you to everyone
for the support.
For the support and for streaming it. We really appreciate that. Another interesting one is 327 million quests completed.
Yeah, and if you're a quester, then definitely check out PTR. Definitely check out the update. You're going to find a vastly improved starting experience, and then quests that are much higher quality than the ones that we were delivering earlier. As we learned, got better with your feedback. You're going to see a lot more of that in the game going forward.
Wanted to let you know we hear the feedback on Fresh Start servers. We're going to have something to talk about real soon. Beyond that, we're going to see you in October where we talk about the roadmap. Bye-bye.
See you, folks.